Imagine waking up in the morning. You get out of bed, your feet touch the floor. What's the first thing that you do? For a lot of people, it's simply making a cup of coffee. According to Reuters and a study of 3,000 people, 64% say that they drink coffee every single day. Coffee has such a huge impact on our society and the people who live in it, and it prompted me to ask, how are we getting this stuff, and where does it come from too? It actually involves a lot of steps. First, you plant seeds for a coffee tree. Next, the coffee beans are harvested, then processed, then milled. They go through a taste test and are finally roasted. Let's dive into the first step, which is planting the seeds to a coffee tree. Believe it or not, coffee really does come from trees. And according to the Roastery, these trees can get up to 10 meters tall. These seeds are planted in a bed, they're watered, and kept in the shade and out of the sunlight. And when they're finally ready, they're planted permanently in the ground. When the trees are grown, they sprout cherries, which contain the coffee beans that we know of. Next, we go on to harvesting. The harvesting period takes place when these cherries are at their peak ripeness. They are either strip-picked or selectively picked. Strip-picked involves picking off all the cherries on a branch at one time. Selectively picked, however, involves picking off the cherries one by one individually by hand. It's a lot more labor-intensive process, so it's usually done for finer coffee. Next, we go on to processing the coffee beans. There are two different ways to do this, either the dry method or the wet method. The dry method is fairly simple. It involves laying out these cherries flat on a surface and letting them dry out in the sun. The wet method, however, is a bit more complicated and involves a lot more steps. First, they are washed in order to remove the skin and the pulp layer on the outside. They're divided and sorted based on their weight and their size, and then left in a big tank of water in order to ferment. This helps to dissolve the mucilage layer that's left. After this, they're washed one more time and then left to go through the aforementioned dry process, in which they are left out in the sun to dry. Next, the coffee beans are milled. This involves 3 different steps. First, there's hulling, polishing, and then grading and sorting. Hulling involves getting rid of the rest of the layers of the cherry in order to access the coffee bean. Next, we have polishing, which is actually an optional step in order to remove any extra skin that's left over. And then finally, we have grading and sorting, which divides the coffee beans by their size and by their weight in order to get the best quality beans and get rid of any beans that have flaws or imperfections. Once the beans are finally milled, they are ready to be shipped off. But before we get to the last step, we need to talk about taste testing. Beans are taste tested by people called cuppers. They test the visual quality, the aroma, and then the taste. It's a very important process in order to get the best quality and best tasting coffee. And next we move on to the last step, which is roasting. Coffee beans are roasted at 550 degrees Fahrenheit. They are kept moving and are always in motion in order to prevent them from burning. While they're roasted, they go through a process called pyrolysis, in which they release a caffeol oil and turn the brown color that we all know coffee beans to look like. After they're roasted, they're cooled off either by using air or water, and then they're finally ready to be grounded, brewed, and consumed. To conclude, coffee beans go through a lot of different steps in order to become a cup of coffee that we all know and love. The seeds are planted into the ground in order to bring about a tree. The cherries are harvested, they're processed, they're milled, the coffee beans get taste tested, and then finally they get roasted. It is a long and labor-intensive process. It involves a lot of people as well, but it's very interesting, and I definitely learned a lot. And I hope you were able to broaden your understanding of where coffee comes from as well. Thank you.